Hello, it's Mark Larson, Superintendent of Matamidi Schools. This is a reiteration of the PTO presentation that took place on October 2nd, 2012. By the end of this presentation, we wanted to have three goals that families would understand and the people that were in attendance. The first is about learning without limits. The second one is a good understanding of current Matamidi student success. I have a couple of slides that specifically point that out. And then Lynn Vieker, our Director of Teaching and Learning, explained about the understanding of support services and extra help for students. Lynn will not be presenting on that. I'll be doing that as we go through these slides. The first thing is that our school district has a vision. It's called College Ready. All students are college ready. And those are 5 things. Schools spend the most time on academic readiness, but those other 4 are also important. However, we've moved beyond all students college ready to look at all students being future ready. And part of our Learning Without Limits philosophy is that students will be future ready. At this point in the presentation to the PTO, we had the principals, Mr. Mark Hamry at Wildwood and Ms. Kirsten Bowens at O.H. Anderson, present some examples of things that are happening in the classroom, about examples of students doing things that were future ready. And as you can see, it's these items on the screen. One thing that runs through them is creativity, and creativity is required for all of these. The NWEA MAPS, that's this test that students take 3 times a year, or sometimes 2 times. And it's given to students in grades 1 through 8. And what this slide means, and I'll just walk through the first grade 1 and grade 2 as examples. What you'll see on the far left is the grade level 1, and the national mean 177. So NWEA, of all the students that were tested in 2011, and they don't have the results for 2012 yet, but of all the students that were tested, the national mean was a RIT score of 177. The Matamidi mean at the end of first grade, the spring of first grade, was 189. What that translates to is a 1 full year ahead. So the grade level equivalent was spring of second grade. And this average student, the one right in the middle, the mean, was at the 80th percentile. And if you look down to grade 2, you'll see that the national mean in the spring of 2011 was 190. Matamidi mean was 200. And what that means is that the student is now more than 1 grade level ahead. Their fall of 4th grade. And as you can see, it continually grows. It tops out, the NWA MAPS tops out the spring of 11th grade, so it doesn't go any further than that. And I do want to emphasize again that this is reading of 2011. So it's Matamidi students in 2011 and the NWA MAPS of 2011 because they don't have the 2012 data in yet. This next one is about math, and you can see a very similar pattern of where our students are. Grade 1, the national mean is 179, the Matamidi mean 191, which means our first grade students at the end of first grade are a full year ahead, and their percentile is 83rd. And what that means is that if you take 100 first graders, the average, the median student at Matamidi will be smarter or achieve more on this math test, more than 83 of them, and then 17 will be ahead. And I really want to emphasize that this is the average. And part of my thinking is that the average Matamidi kid walks around, looks around, and says, hey, I'm an average kid. And yet, they might be average by Matamidi standards, but they're not average by national standards. And that means we have to do things that will challenge, that will give them the correct level of difficulty, give them instruction at the correct level of difficulty that will enable them to be college ready and future ready. This next slide is about what the district-wide reading score was of 2011 and then 2012. And as you can see, I hope it's clear, the red DNM, that stands for did not meet. We had 2% of our students that did not meet the standards for the district-wide reading on the MCA. 9% partially met, and as you can see, the circle goes around. The blue is exceed standards, and as you can tell by looking at this, for district-wide reading 2011 to 2012, we did show good improvement. Now this is not all the exact same students. It's tested in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 for reading. So you lose some students that don't take the test. The 8th graders took it in 2011. They don't in 2012. That's why the numbers are a little bit different. But the point remains the same, is that we're doing exceptionally well. Our students are meeting and exceeding. However, there are some students that are still not, and that's a focus that I'll get to in a minute here. Here's the district-wide math. And as you can see, it's a little bit higher here in the did not meet. So in this particular instance, we had 27% of our students that did not meet the standard in 2011, and that number then dropped to 18. So we made really good improvement from one year to the next. This is the writing test, and ninth graders take this, and this is a high stakes test that every student needs to take in order to pass, or in order to graduate, excuse me. In 2011 we had 10 students, that's only 3% that did not pass the writing, and in 2012 we had one single student that did not pass the test. And it was interesting for me when I was talking with our data team when we met in August about this slide. It was a strange room in that a lot of people were saying like, wow, I wonder if I had that student. I wonder if I had him and if I could have done something to make sure that he had passed. The whole thing is that all of our students have to pass. And so we're real proud of the fact that we had such high achievement on the MCA reading and math and the science tests, but everybody's got to pass. And in order to make that happen, we need to go with learning without limits. Now this slide, I put it in here to try to be amusing, and it is amusing to me at least. And as you can tell, use a pencil. Part of our issue had been is that we had said things maybe explicitly, maybe implicitly, that if you're in third grade, you can't use that pen. They're for fourth graders and up. And so we had some artificial ceilings. And part of our issue in terms of learning without limits is we want to take those ceilings off. If a student's prepared and ready to do second grade material and they're in first grade, then we'll give them second grade material. We want students to be able to achieve as much as they can, and that's part of the learning without limits. And you may have heard me talk before, either in podcasts or in other times, about floors and ceilings. The floor is our MCA score. That's what our minimal expectation. But we've also had sometimes artificial ceilings. Well, you can't do this work until you're in that grade. We're working to take that away. The other piece with learning without limits is taking the ceiling in terms of limiting the number of slots. At one point in time, there may have been instances in which we would have only had, say, 30 spots for students to get into. And if you were the 31st, sorry, you didn't make it. Well, we've changed that quite a bit so that if there are 40 kids with that need, then there are 40 slots available. If there's 50 kids with that need, then there's 50 slots available. We're not going to put artificial ceilings or limits on that. And as you can tell from the previous slides, our proficiency on the MCA is our floor. The achievement on the NWA shows that there is a very high ceiling, and we're trying to take that off completely. And then the presentation, I just spoke a little bit about the number of AP scholars we have and the National Merit Scholars we have. Very impressive both. Lynn Vieker, our Director of Student Support Services, Curriculum Director, and Director of Teaching and Learning. Lynn has 3 really almost full-time jobs and just does exemplary work with us. She went over some of the systems of support that we have, and each one of these ones she went into in a little bit of detail with the literacy blocks, the math blocks, the targeted group interventions, and the targeted group interventions on the math and the reading, and those are for the 5 to 10% of the students that aren't at grade level. Then at the very top it's the red, and these are intensive individual interventions, as you can see on both sides of that. In order to get more detail on this, Lynn explained what each of these different supports mean. For the reading tier 2 support, this is what it means. I'm going to speed through this to get closer to the end, but you can easily see these, read them, and if you have any questions about this, you can either call Lynn Vieker, leave a question on our website, ask a question page, or call the building principal. And these are the tier 3 supports for reading. DIBELS is a weekly monitoring system. It's a test that we have. That's what it's called. And if you look down at that third block, it's AdSense. That's Alternative Student Instructional Delivery System. And what that is it provides specialized help, and it's just an educational acronym. Math, same type of things. The CBM, that stands for Curriculum-Based Measurement, and then the AdSense again, and there is that specialized help with a grant that we've received. And here's the tier 3 again. Then moving on, in order to make sure that we are creating situations where there is learning without limits, where all students are able to achieve their full potential, we go through a pretty extensive curriculum review. And you can see what they are here. On the second one, the math review, they're looking at math expressions, mostly at O.H. Anderson, with CGI strategies. That stands for Cognitively Guided Instruction. And you may have heard or gone even to some of the sessions that Mark Hamry has held and Kirsten Bowens has held to go into more detail with that. If you look below to the writing review, being a writer was something that we used quite a bit the last 2 years, and now we're looking at Read Well composition, which aligns more closely with our Read Well literacy program. Other curriculum reviews were the science and engineering, social studies is starting, and then Spanish was done, and gifted and talented. That was also completed last year, and because of that, we've made some significant changes in the programming for that. And that actually drove a lot of our push to make sure that we were able to have learning without limits. Two other areas, media support that's going on right now, support services, that's guidance counseling, guidance, social work, that type of thing. That's been going on, and then we're also going to be doing FIAD Music and Art. That's going to be happening in 2013-14. Lynn went out and talked with a bunch of the teachers about learning without limits and what it meant, and here are a couple of quotes that they had, and they're really positive about how well the students are doing, how truly exceptional they are, and so forth. Moving ahead quickly, I guess, one of the successes that we've seen is that student needs are now seen as being more important than previous structure. That's part of the learning without limits, taking that off. And then students are progressing at their own pace without being held back with artificial things. That goes back to that cartoon about third graders and fourth graders. One of the things about the correct level of difficulty, I gave the example of water and being the instructional level. If you're in a lake and the water is up to your chest, that's not the correct level of difficulty if you're trying to become a better swimmer. If you're trying to become a better learner, a lot of times the correct level of difficulty is right about where your mouth is. You can still breathe out of your nose, but you have to work at it. That's when the best teaching happens and the best learning. And if the water is way over your head, then it's too difficult, frustration sets in. So we have to be at the correct level of difficulty. Too low and it's too easy, just right is the right kind of instruction, and if a student is able to do third grade work when they're in second grade, then we should give them third grade work. And if they're able to do second grade work in second grade, then that's what we should give them. However, we have had some struggles with this, and not all has been perfect. For example, there's a culture shift, and that takes some time, and people need to get over that in terms of we're not going to be doing things the same way. We will allow students to progress at the rate that they will be able to do and succeed at. We didn't have all of the answers. We've had a couple of questions and some emails and some things that have come to me either through the principals or else emailed directly. What's going to happen in 5 years when my student is at the middle school? The answer, and not try to be glib about it, is that we'll give them the correct level of instruction when they're at the middle school. We can't predict what will happen when the students are in high school. We think we know what will happen, but we may be wrong. For example, students may say that my parents pushed me too hard, or the school pushed me too hard, or I'm frustrated with this, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult. Excuse me for a moment. You know, it's interesting. I should have put the phone on either on vibrate or else have just taken it off the hook, so I had to pause it to answer the phone. I mentioned about having all the answers. We think we know what's going to happen when students get to that certain point, but we aren't able to articulately lay out a 12-year path for students that we know every single student will get on. But we do know that we can't waste a year in anybody's life of students, and that we have to give them the correct level of difficulty at that point. We have to be able to teach at the level the students are, where they are. It has to happen that year. The expectations is another struggle that we've had, making sure that the expectations match what students are able to do. Expectations from teachers and families to make sure that we've met them. And the third struggle that we've had is with communication. Some people feel as if they've been caught either by surprise or that they didn't know all of this. The kind of mind switch or mind change to learning without limits has created some difficulties for people in that it's not the way we've always done business. But the fact is that we want all students to achieve, all students to succeed, and that means they have to be taught at the correct level of difficulty, and we're going to take those ceilings off and allow students to go without limits. All in all, it was a great night with the PTO. I hope to see more of you at other PTO meetings. If you have any questions about any of this, please leave a question at our question page on our website, or if it's specific about your child, please call either Mr. Hamry at Wildwood or Mrs. Bowens at OH Anderson. Thank you.